everybody. Welcome to our Quarantine Studio Visit series. I'm joined today by Anna Warfield, and she has a recent BFA from Cornell University and a Bachelor of Science in Communications. We're really excited to be showing Anna's work as part of our Emerging Artist series in partnership with the Cayuga Museum. She'll be having work at the Schweinfurth and at the Cayuga at some point when we reopen, and we're very excited about it. Anna, would you like to tell us a little bit about your upcoming exhibit?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm so excited to be able to chat with you guys. And yeah, so the exhibit that's coming up, it's going to be work in part that I already have done, which is behind me, as well as some new pieces. And specifically, I was thinking about the dichotomy between the two spaces, the Schweinfurth being kind of a more contemporary space to show work in, and then the history-based Cayuga Museum, and thinking about my work and how I can translate ideas or feelings or create different environments using the words and the text in like a dichromatic in a dichromatic way. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but so the new work that I'm making kind of takes on a different type of voice as compared to some of my previous works, and it's maybe more of like summary type language as compared to maybe more command or like reflexive kind of self-referential language, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, and to tell the viewer a little bit about the project, the Cayuga Museum is next door to the Schweinfurth Art Center, and it is a historic museum, but also it has this arts component. And it was the place where sound was first put onto film. And part of the reason we were very interested in Anna's work is she uses a lot of text and words, and we thought it would be such a great juxtaposition of these contemporary pieces using words as art. So that was part of the reason we were excited to show her in the two spaces. So she'll be at the Schweinfurth and at the Cayuga at the same time. And I was curious, Anna, how do you begin constructing your text, and how do you begin choosing the words that you use for your work?
Yeah, so everything I do, it typically starts with like an origin type concept, or maybe coming from an experience that I've had, or an emotion that's kind of like all encompassing that I'm trying to process or work through. The communications degree was in research communications, which meant we were looking at how people responded and interacted with different modes of talking or viewing or any form of communication, really. And so my interest was kind of in how to clearly articulate like a very specific thing, feeling, emotion, whatever it might be. Once I kind of have had something that I'm like working through and processing, I can't really like say like when it happens, but like something will like click and like a block of like text will come to me that's like probably needs to be parsed down or like reworked in a certain way, but that summarizes what I'm kind of trying to get across and the complexities of it, while also trying to like keep it digestible for the viewer or the onlooker. So, and I guess position and voice also really matter for me. So like the pink text that I have behind me and some of the pink works are really like meant to be kind of command oriented, or like asking something of the viewer, and quite a like in a big way. And that's kind of why structurally they're structured the way they are. They're vertical, and they have, when they're hung and suspended in space, they take up space, like you can see through it, but really it's blocking what's behind you. And it's kind of creating this like moment of like, you can ignore the text, but if you don't and you take it in, like you have this big kind of ask of you, and then it's like, what do you do with that? If nothing, that's fine, but if something, then like it's asking more of you, just visually. And then some of the more recent pieces for the All Things Being Blue, they're actually blue, and it's also kind of a shift in how I'm speaking and how the work is speaking, and it's kind of more of this kind of banal summary of maybe what it's like to be a woman and have someone mansplain to you, or just kind of like taking on like a different look and a kind of a different voice as well. So that's where the blue pieces and kind of the pink pieces come from. If I have like a late night where I'm like not able to sleep or something, and I'm just like constantly overthinking, like a lot of my process is thinking and rethinking and overthinking, and because the work is it's me processing, and then so something will finally click, and it's like that's the thing that like makes the most sense to articulate this complex kind of feeling or position that I'm in.
Yeah, you mentioned mansplaining, and I see a lot of themes in your work. Can you hit on some of those themes, like specifically point of view and voice? Like whose voice is giving these commands? What point of view are these? Is the text coming from?
Yeah, so I kind of like, I guess in the pink text, it's definitely coming from me, and the pink kind of referencing like femininity, maybe in kind of an antiquated manner, but still something that I'm interested in reclaiming and like owning. Like I don't think it should be frowned upon to be a woman, or to be a woman, especially in an art space. Working with kind of fabric, which is like a more art craft movement type medium, which has had pushback in its own right. But I don't think it's something to like shy away from. And so I kind of embrace all of that, and like all the kind of tropes of being female to push forth my message and like what I'm interested in talking about, which often revolves around even just the act of speaking as a woman, and like claiming what you have to say and how it is validated, and how it's even at points women with opinions are sexualized. And so a lot of my work is like it incorporates like sexual innuendo in ways that like I'm not necessarily explicitly talking about sex, but I could be, and that's where your head's going. And I find it interesting to kind of play with that. So referencing the body in different ways and thinking about how people speak. Like the piece behind me again, think louder through those parched lips. It's like, for me, it was kind of encapsulating the idea of thinking, but also pushing it out of your mouth, like the act of speaking, and how can you articulate something that feels like it's been like taken from you, or like if you're parched, it's hard to speak, and like all of these kind of different layers to it. But then somehow in referencing lips, people like it tips your head a different way, and maybe they're thinking more in the direction of something sexual, or yeah. So I definitely like to play with that kind of two layers to most of what I'm talking about or what I'm putting out there.
Yeah, actually the piece behind you is one of my favorites for that reason, the reason you just explained, in that the text itself is not explicitly sexual in any way, but the fact that it's a command, and the fact that it references the lips, and the fact that you've like slowly faded the red down, the pink gets brighter at the bottom, and it sort of becomes skin-like. You don't reference necessarily explicitly a woman, but it's pink, and then it's coded very well. And your work really has this intense connection with the viewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and kind of where the work, I guess this may be a good point to talk about that, where it originated from, was grappling with, like in school, like what does it mean to be a woman in a college setting and in the arts, and like, so the work definitely was kind of like, I have this platform as an artist to create something that might have the potential to impact someone beyond my general sphere, which might just be a lot of women, but might not be, and kind of communicate what I'm feeling in a synthesized manner that could make that individual or group of individuals think in a slightly different way, or consider my perspective for a change. So I kind of wanted to take that and run with it. And I actually started working with books as like kind of a mode of teaching. Like you can learn through books, but I was working with fiber-based books. They were soft as well, like kind of children's books that maybe you had when you were a kid. And like that's how I learned. So I was thinking about teaching and reteaching, both for myself and potentially in that process for a viewer as well. And so that's kind of where the language comes from. It's like demanding of both me, because I'm involved in the process as well, but then also demanding of the onlooker. And so, yeah, it's a very long process of like internal acceptance of like what I'm trying to work through and think about and put out there. And then like putting it out there in the most appropriate manner. So when I came to where I got with these larger pieces, it was, I continually failed to work with text in these book pieces, which was funny to me. So like as soon as I stepped away from the book as a traditional format and thought about maybe pages of books, like this could be a page of a book, I was able to somehow, whatever it was in my head, shift into actually working with text and thinking about text as like this kind of like maybe drawing medium, but in a sculptural format where you can, like the words in their order and how they're pieced together, like it matters, and it creates this interesting kind of plush object that, like, if in an ideal setting, like you can see it from both sides, so then it has cutouts to it and there's something happening behind it and there's this layering component, but it's still, if you're seeing it from the like the correct side, it still is like this barrier to your view.
So you had mentioned to me earlier that you were working on some new work that had to do with the COVID crisis, and you were kind of shifting and going in a different direction. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so I'm stepping, well, it's kind of like a push and pull type thing. Working on a lot of these plush sculptures, but I'm also working on like simultaneously a command series, which I actually, the 10 commands you guys had at Made in New York in 2019. So from there, I made another series, the What's It series, and it's still kind of like commands. And so a new piece in that is gonna be stop, no, don't stop. So it's the same words, just played around again. And I had a larger book that was the same iteration of that, but it seems to like fit and call into that space. I'm also, like, obviously as a fiber artist, watching everyone working with their sewing machines and like personally making their own like objects and masks from fabric at this point. I've been thinking a lot about that and like the complexities of it in a society where for the longest time, we dissuaded certain individuals from wearing fabric coverings on their face, and we're very, like, there's a lot of pushback, or there has been. Even still, people are pushing back against the fabric coverings with COVID, even though there's like a health reason to it. So thinking about that and like also what that's a barrier to in terms of intimacy. So I'm making this two-sided mask where it's like a mask and another mask for another individual to wear that are bound together. But that still kind of relates to everything that I'm always kind of thinking about in the back of my mind, like social positioning and roles and things like that.
Is there anything else you want to mention about your work, or where you're going, or what you're interested in, inspiration?
Oh, so many things. I mean, yeah, there's so many places I could go with that. I think it's maybe also kind of important to talk about, like, I've had peaks and valleys during this whole quarantine type thing. So I had a really high production rate at the early start of this. I was like, yes, like, this is going to be like my residency. I'm just going to pump out work. It's going to be great. Then I had a valley where I was like, no, what's happening? Like, nothing's going on for me, and like things are being canceled in the arts, and this is such a tragic time, and people are sick, and like, and I think that's important to acknowledge as well. And so like I'm reemerging into an uptick again where I'm feeling like inspired and hopeful for the arts. Yeah, that's important to me. But in terms of people that I'm like watching their processes and what they're doing and inspiration wise, which I think is always interesting as well. I've always been a huge fan of Louise Bourgeois. My early books were definitely heavily inspired by her book work, which were also fabric. There's a gentleman from the Binghamton area, which is where I'm situated, Sam Jablon. He does text-based work as well, so I like to kind of like keep up with what he's doing and watching his trajectory and things like that. Zoe Buckman, another fiber artist that I'm a fan of. Obviously like Mel Bachner and things like that, artists that work with text. So like new direction wise, I'm thinking about like, what does it mean to make art in the era of COVID? And like kind of what clicked my new uptick is like maybe we won't be able to be in museum settings or interior settings for the arts right now, but we're about to hit a great summer space where outdoor installation based work is probably going to be like the direction. So I've been thinking about banners and flags and like how my work can maybe translate into an exterior space and just go with that. And maybe public art is kind of a direction that will work for me and others at this point.
Yeah. So I love seeing the stuff that's behind you. Can you kind of, I know it's so tricky to move the camera around, but if you can move around and show us a little bit more of your space and where you're working, and we
Yes.
can see the studio cat.
Yeah, Studio Cat, I will show. So this was like my wall of text, and then I will show you Studio Cat. Yep, right on the books. he he really likes to be involved. He's like a little cat dog. So he likes to be involved in all of my processes. So I have like a pile of sculptures and prints, lots of what are those, frames. Sometimes I like to work towards putting things in frames. So if I see the frames and I pull them out, it makes me very excited and I make. This is my kitchen, dining room, sewing studio, screen printing, hybrid space. There's always a lot that's happening in here. Beyond just eating, unfortunately. This is my little sewing machine. It's like my favorite thing ever, and it's such a tank, and I absolutely recommend that everybody who works with fiber go for the Husqvarna Viking edition because they are absolute tanks. # sponsor me. But that's mostly it. I live, work fully in the arts.
So, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your space with us and sharing your work with us. And we're so excited to see what you come up with for your exhibit. You can see more from Anna at her website, annawarfield.com. And check her out when she's showing with us at the Schweinfurth. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.